Hello and good evening because it is dark outside. It's like 10 p.m. Excuse me. So we're back, and today I wanted to talk about how do I say this? Let's just chat about public conversations, if you will. This happened a few weeks ago, and I thought, hey, great subject matter. This is just my opinion. I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. I may be wrong in your eyes, but this is just how I see it. Because you can't please everyone, and I'm sure, some of you may disagree with my take on things. Also, no apologies for how I look. I notice a lot of people, personally, I feel like they look fine, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry for how I look like a mess. But I just feel like embrace it wherever you're at. And so I have a sty, or it's kind of going away on the upper right and the lower left, which is kind of going away as well. And I don't usually use my glasses, so not super comfortable in them, but no apologies. This is what we have tonight. So let me get into the story. So we went to a restaurant, my family and myself. So we had the 3 kids, my husband and myself, and it was a beautiful, I think it was a New Zealand restaurant, and it was like a patio outside where it was almost like it had a lot of greenery. It was as if you were outside. It was wonderfully decorated. And so they seated us outside in like this bench, and there was a couple benches like that. So there was us, and then a bench sort of like if you're sitting on this side, obviously in front, and then like a few more benches down. The bench, I guess in front of us or whatever, behind us, next to us, right? It was like a table of 6 people. And I don't know what I was doing. Oh, I took my daughter because she was having a little fit. So I took her to the other side of the restaurant. So they sat my husband and my 2 sons first. So I was with her, and then I kind of walked over, sat down. Obviously, I am a plus size person. And so, excuse me, I could tell. So this was the thing. I don't know if they were talking about The Biggest Loser or overweight people prior to me getting there. But here's where I think it's weird. When I got there and I sat down, I could hear that their conversation, like it elevated, like the volume was turned up several degrees, and it was just like not necessary. I usually am somebody who's very like, whatever, no big deal. Let people do whatever, because they are completely entitled to talking their conversations, and they're, entitled to disagree or not like people who are overweight. Like, that's their take on it. Sure. I really don't know what it was. But all of a sudden I could tell, like as I sat down talking to my husband, all of a sudden I kind of like hear the noise level rising. And so what I heard from that conversation, because we weren't that far apart, is something about The Biggest Loser, and these people are obese. And like, it was just this very passionate, like, I don't know, they were just frustrated with these people and how could you get that way? So I'm sitting there trying to ignore it because we've got our kids with us, and I'm like, for the most part, it's not like I haven't been present where there's been conversations about weight, or somebody calling somebody fat in my presence. And like I said, usually I'm not superly sensitive about being offended because that's kind of frustrating in itself, and I get that. But when you elevate your voice almost on purpose, the 6 individuals, so of course it was even louder, it just seems like it's on purpose to, I couldn't tell you what their intention was, but it just sounded like they were trying to maybe point out that I was the only heavyset person there because I didn't see anybody else. Mind you, at that table, there was a fellow chunker. It was a little on the heavyset side. Probably normal in their, like in their community is probably normal. He wasn't too big. I mean, I was definitely bigger. But I just feel like it wasn't necessary. They were calling too much attention to themselves. And this conversation went on, 10 minutes probably. And so we're looking at the menu. I'm trying to have a conversation with the kids, but they're like really loud. I'm looking at my husband and I'm getting like increasingly annoyed because I'm like, I'm not going to call attention to it. They're entitled to their conversation again. But then I just start like, God, when are they going to be done? You made your point. Everybody's like laughing. Oh my gosh. And then the way they eat, and they're just so big, and whatever it was, their conversation was just like, it was just like they did too much. Wasn't necessary. And so that was fine. And I think that the reason that it bothered me was because first, I want to be sensitive with my words. I'm not saying that obesity is a disability, like in the sense of, yes, maybe certain people can't do as much, but it's not a disability, like let's say compared to somebody in a wheelchair, that type of disability. But what I thought to myself was, we are definitely a group of people that for whatever reason, could be many reasons, there is addiction to food, trauma is involved. Somebody who hasn't experienced anything, like tip of the iceberg, will say, just stop eating or just eat less. From this side, it is a little more complex than that. And sometimes it is like addiction. And food addiction, I think, is very difficult to deal with because you do need food, like in general, but you should not abuse it. Whereas if it's alcoholism or a drug, just quit cold turkey, or just don't put yourself in that situation. It's a little different, and it's trickier with food. So with that being said, what I'm saying is, if you had somebody with a disability at a table behind you or in your area, let's say somebody in a wheelchair, I feel like, you can have your conversation maybe quietly about, wow, disability, people, like, it's really hard for them to do things. And man, even in a positive light, I guess, if they're saying like, wow, yeah, I feel really bad for someone who's disabled because like they can't do anything. I'm just making this like probably an immature conversation. But let's say somebody was saying that, man, I feel so bad because people who are disabled, they can't do anything. Gosh. And, I wonder what they feel like. Like, I wonder, when they see somebody hiking, like, don't they wish they could, X, Y, and Z, whatever. I don't think that conversation should be that loud. First of all, I don't think that in such a public setting, when you're so close to tables, that should even be a conversation. But again, I don't want to control people's conversations because we're all entitled to have them. And sometimes, there's debates and good conversations. But I feel like when they notice, this is why it kind of like, it just made me feel like, really? I walked in, the conversation was not loud, but I guess they noticed me, and then it was like elevated. To me, it only, I haven't thought of any other ideas. Maybe I'm limited here. If you think it was something else, please let me know. But it was very like, oh, there goes one. Like, how could she be so obese, or how could she be so unhealthy, or whatever? That was not necessary because it almost felt like, well, we want to make her feel bad. Maybe not on a superficial level. Maybe it was, like a subconscious. But it wasn't necessary because their tone was so loud. And then after they were done with that conversation, which was, again, a good 10 minutes, they like quieted down. They weren't as loud. And eventually, thank God, they moved on to something else. Like, it was distracting. And so that's what I'm saying. I feel like if you had a person in a wheelchair, like, roll up, I just wouldn't be saying out loud, man, I wonder what they feel like. Or because, again, it's really hard because it's hard to compare those two because a disability, sometimes they can't help it, or, either they were born that way or something happened and they became that way. Obesity, I know a lot of people might disagree and say, you caused that on yourself, and I get it. I could see where you think that those of us that are overweight, we did cause it, we overate, but sometimes, please hear me out. I do believe that sometimes it's not black and white. Some people, like in my case, I have PCOS, and I've been told that I need to keep a low carb diet in order to help my body lose weight. If I don't do that, it's not going to lose weight no matter what I do. I don't know. I've been told that by professionals, and it's hard, not impossible, but it's hard to give up those carbs. For other people, it's trauma or addiction, or it's, if nobody has been in those shoes, I think that they tend to look at us, the plus size community, as less than, and dare I say disgusting, because I've heard it. So to me, I just feel like you wouldn't do that if somebody had a disability or just anything, or if it was a different race. You wouldn't be saying something out loud about it. It's just uncomfortable. I personally wouldn't do it. And so I just felt like it was not necessary. They could have kept their conversation quieter. Again, what I'm emphasizing here is that you can have the conversation, but when somebody walks into the room that maybe is in that, subject matter, just, I would say either keep your voice down, because their voice was lower until I got there, and it slowly started creeping, and then it was just like front and center. It's just uncomfortable. It is. There is no hiding it. There is no hiding, obviously, that we're bigger people, those of us who are obese. But it is uncomfortable to just kind of sit there and feel like, wow, you're really talking about how gross, or why can't they get it together? Or don't they know that, this is really terrible for their health? Gosh, I mean, they're on that treadmill. I'm telling you, this was on and on. It was just going and going. I really, I got to a point where I wanted to say, the thing is, it's really hard for me, for other reasons, just, to speak up and not to lose it and just break down emotionally because I don't know how to stand up for myself, or I don't know how to communicate certain things without crying. There's nothing wrong with crying, but you should be able to express yourself and kind of regulate those emotions. And some of us, sometimes we didn't get to do that as kids. So it's harder to have conversations that are difficult. And so I wanted to say, excuse me, this is in my dreamland as I'm sitting there, as I stepped out of my body for a second and thought, dude, I really want to just say something. Excuse me, I'm sitting here and we all know that I'm obese, as you say. But the level of your voice is pretty distracting. And I was just wondering if you can, maybe lower it a little bit. I just feel like things were racing. I'm either going to sound sarcastic. I wanted to be sarcastic first. And then I was like, no, I want to be serious. But then I was like, no, I'm going to break down. I'm going to raise my voice. All these things that you think about. And I just feel like I shouldn't have had to. Obviously, I'm a customer of the place. I wanted to enjoy myself too. I think it's just maybe a difficult topic. Again, I'm not shying away from the fact that obviously I am overweight. It's not a secret. And it's a struggle, it's just an internal struggle. It is what it is. But it just was, I feel like, not called for. I could be wrong, because it is a public place and you're entitled to your conversation. But I think I go back to this again, is just be mindful of your surroundings. Ever since my kids were little, my older ones, I would always be like, shh, if you're in a restaurant or you're in a public place, lower your voice. There are people around you that are eating and they want to enjoy their meal because they're paying customers. Nobody wants to go to a restaurant to hear a child scream. That might be a conversation for another topic, because I have issues with that. I have kids, but I definitely at home teach them as much as possible how to behave in a restaurant, whether when they're really little, you just shush them down or, redirect them, because that way they know that when they're at a table, you just kind of, as best as you can, teach them. So I always say there's other people around here and they're eating. They want to enjoy their time. I'm just always, I feel, considerate of others in that sense. And I feel like this falls in the same category. There is someone around you who is sort of part of the subject, but we don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. And I don't think they were, and they were laughing hard. And it was just you definitely feel almost invisible, as weird as that sounds, because, we're so big. So yeah, I just thought, I need to put this out there. If, and I'm always I love having conversations and discussions about topics. Sometimes they're important. They're like everything's important, but sometimes they're hard topics. So, if you feel like this is off or you disagree, please let me know. I'm always looking to expand my knowledge. And so, from my perspective, because I'm only talking about my perspective, being the person sort of that I was talked about in a way, because it was so distracting and obnoxious and just loud for no reason. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And so, maybe it should have been like, just brush it off. No big deal. Everybody's going to talk about what they want to talk about. You just mind your own business. It was just kind of hard minding my own business because their voices were like all up in my area. So anyway, I just wanted to put those feelings out there. I welcome comments. Please let me know what you think. If you're from the plus size community, how do you handle things? Have you been in a place where things kind of got uncomfortable? They're kind of talking about you. Obviously, it's not direct. They don't know me. They're not talking about me personally, but, just, do you feel uncomfortable? Do you just say, whatever, I don't care what they're saying, because it is true. Obviously, we should be healthier. Let me know in the comments below. And I welcome all comments. Just be kind. I just want this community anyway to be kind in the comments. You can disagree totally. And I'm open to that, and I'm open to having conversations. So the only thing I ask is that people are kind to each other. Sometimes people say positive vibes only, but I think that it is positive to have a disagreement, and do it in a kind manner. I never want to be like, oh, everything's perfect over here, we're just going to keep it great and yay. And that's not what I want. So, just leave your opinion below and enlighten me. Maybe I'm seeing it only from my side, and maybe there's something else to be looked at. But I wanted to put this out there because if you are with your fellow friends and you are thinner, in my case, I would say if you're lucky to be thin, or you don't have an issue with food in that manner, just be aware of your surroundings and have your conversations in a inside voice, because we were kind of outside, but again, it was part of the restaurant. And just be mindful. I really don't say that to just thinner people who are having these conversations, because again, I'm just talking about the obesity conversation from this mostly group of people that were thinner. But just in general, whatever you're talking about, just be mindful. And I would say the same thing to my community, because, I'm sure there's people who are like body positive, and I don't want to say take it too far, but maybe from our perspective, or the Lizzos out there might be seen as hating, those who, there's always hate from all kinds of angles. So I would say the same thing to us. If you're out there, definitely don't be loud and obnoxious about another group of people that we really don't know much about, in the sense of like, not all thinner people are hating on us. I have friends of all sizes, and excuse me, they love me for my personality, and I highly appreciate that. But it took me a long time to even accept that from others, because I've also been rejected. And so from my perspective, you always assume it's because of the way that you look. And I've been, happy to have people in my life that have looked past that and just love me for who I am. And so anyway, this video has gone a little longer than expected. If you have made it all the way through, thank you for being here. If you like what you see on the channel, please consider subscribing and hit the notification bell, so that you'll know the next time that we have one of these chats or another video in general. That is it for tonight. Have a great evening, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.